Welcome to Your Way Now. We're Sue and Sarah, coaches supporting people living with cancer and those moving beyond it. Each episode shares real stories, expert insight, and gentle tools to help you feel more supported physically, emotionally, and mentally. This is Your Way Now.
Get the strength you want and need from real stories and expert voices. It's time for Your Way Now.
And welcome to Your Way Now, the podcast for, with inspirational stories, hints and tips for anyone going through cancer. Today, I'm Sarah.
I'm Sue. Hello.
And today we have got on the lovely Julia Leckey, who is, I don't always like to use cancer survivor, and I know you perhaps don't either. So however you want to describe yourself, I'll let you take it away.
I suppose I am a cancer survivor. I've had 2 aggressive cancers in my lifetime. One when I was 39. I was running a business with a business partner. We'd grown it to about 60, 70 people. I'd had a tiny premature baby about a year before, who'd been born at 27 weeks, and then discovered I'd got a really aggressive breast cancer. So it was a lot to do.
Yeah, absolutely huge.
And went through a year worth of, pretty grueling treatment to get to a point where the cancer was removed. I'd had 6 chemo sessions and radio, and then got sent away with a 25% survival. So yeah, it was a really tough time to have lots of things shifting at the same time. My work life was shifting, being a mother, my identity, my health. It felt like a lot to hold in one person's hands. But I have to flip forward 12 years. I had a reoccurrence, a new cancer when I was 45. Another aggressive breast cancer. I had 12 chemos, radio, and again, flipping forward another 6 years from that, I'm now fully cancer free, on no drugs of any type, and living my best life. So I have to say, I do feel like I'm a survivor, back to your earlier question. And I am now sitting here cancer free and very grateful for the life that gave me, and created a very different path that I would never had if I hadn't have had the cancer. And I'm, in that sense, really happy that I'm here today, because I've had a wildly different life than I would have had if I hadn't have had cancer. If that makes sense.
No, it does, because I always say cancer, however much it can still be very hard, and I'm not going to take any of that away at all, because I still live in fear of reoccurrence and everything else myself. But ultimately, cancer was my greatest gift in terms of helping me change around my life into a much. I just like myself better as a person. I think just generally, do you know what I mean? It gave me so many gifts and so many tools and just such a different way to live my life. And I know that that's something that happened for you too. So it'd be great to hear more about why you feel like that.
I think what would happened, I'd left university, come down to London, and I was really lucky. I got an amazing job in one of the WPP companies, and had a really quite ambitious, fast-paced career. I was flying around the world, working for some really big brands, um, and then went off and had a baby. He's 20 next month. So not quite a baby now. He's taller than me. I have to look up to tell him off. Um, and then I went off and had a baby. And when I sort of came back to work, I felt my career path had crumbled a little bit. It was hard to travel. I didn't really know where I was going to go next, but I felt super ambitious. So I set up my own business at 31 with a 10-month-old, with a very good friend of mine. And within 8 years, we found ourselves with a 68 people, £5.5 million turnover business, and it was relentless.
Mm.
I'd already, as I mentioned earlier, had got pregnant again, but gave birth at 27 weeks. I think my body was exhausted. And when I got the cancer diagnosis, I went to this amazing holistic nutritionist who said, Julia, to keep up with the pace of life, you needed another spare body hanging in your wardrobe. So it was a really eye-opening, deeply spiritual time for me when I really had to work out what I wanted. Because I think when you have a diagnosis like that, you can't lie to yourself that later will happen. You cannot. So you have to go, if I want to write a book in the future, I want to go traveling. I don't really want to be in this business partnership anymore for various reasons. You cannot wait for later. You
Mm.
have to really dig deep into your inner soul and say, why am I on this planet? What is my meaning? What is my soul asking me to do? And I realized, at that point, I no longer wanted to be in that partnership and I no longer wanted to be running that business.
That's amazing that you had enough focus to be able to make those decisions at a time where so much else was going on, going through, you say, an aggressive breast cancer and all the treatment for that, and a tiny baby to look after, and a toddler by the sounds of it as well. So yeah, that's how did you, as somebody, I haven't had cancer myself, so it's hard for me to understand how you have the space for those thoughts. Or I mean, is it during treatment? Was it afterwards? When did you really sort of come to those realizations?
I had this really bizarre moment. And sometimes I talk, and I'm with hindsight, so I have to sort of forgive myself for that but I do remember I was going through a series of scans. We'd been for a massive pitch I was waiting to find out about for a phone call. So the phone call came through, we'd won the pitch, and that was great. And the cancer, and then 5 minutes later I got delivered that the cancer was the
Mm.
whole of my breast, under my arm, and I was going to have to go through quite a serious set of things to to get my health back on track. And I just had this deep down feeling in my body, which is sad to say, because I could almost go back and love my younger self for this, and I wish me now was in that room with her. But I sat there in that chair getting that diagnosis, and the shock and the shock of it, and I thought, thank God I can't do that life anymore.
Right.
I cannot continue with the life that I've been living anymore, and this is my get out. I'm done.
Mm. So
And
tell
that's
me
really
about,
sad, isn't it?
That is very sad, actually, that it takes to the point of really facing your mortality, actually, in such a powerful way, I guess, for want of a better word, and the fact that it takes it to that to actually make you sit back and actually go, this is not what I want. And it shouldn't be like that, that it takes us to the point where the stress that we go through drives us into the point of disease and illness and everything else. And it sounds like you were so burnt out. And then all of a sudden, it's that actually makes you sit up and pay attention.
Yeah, because I thought, oh, I knew I wasn't happy. I knew I was an autopilot. I knew that I was, yeah, deeply unhappy. And I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know how to get out of a situation which felt impossible. But I think when your life is the pain of that diagnosis and the reality there may not be a tomorrow for you, makes you very crystal clear about what you will and won't tolerate and
Mm.
what you will and won't continue forward with. And it brought to a head a lot of very painful things that I had to address very quickly. And again, I'm talking from hindsight. I was overwhelmed with a lot of confusion, a lot of, at the time. But as the confusion cleared, and I went to see a psychiatrist, and I spent some time with her analyzing things, I was very, very deeply unhappy in my life.
Yeah. So what next?
So, after I went through all the treatment the first time, I had some very difficult conversations with my best friend and business partner, which I'm not really going to go into because it was really difficult, and deeply, deeply difficult time. Um, but the end result of that was within about a year, I'd been bought out by the board, and I we went to America for 3 weeks. We got married, and my life radically changed, and it was amazing and scary. Joe Dispenza, we both love Joe Dispenza. I'd been from this very predictable past into a predictable future, thrown out of that into the unknown. So my health was unknown, my career was unknown, and I'd always had a lot of identity around my career, my career path. And so suddenly I was, back very much being a mom at home. And I was in this absolute unknown space, which both thrilled me and also made me think, wow, what's possible. Um, so had a year off and took some time out, and then I set up my own business again, and just on my own. And my clients came with me, and I ran my own show. Um, and about 3 years after that, I again had this feeling. I don't know about you, Sarah, but I felt I felt this feeling that I was going to get cancer again. I cannot tell you why, but I had this feeling that, and again, I wanted to do other things. Running a business it's like a incredibly hungry child you're looking after. And as much as exhilarating as it is, it can also be incredibly wearing. But I was doing it on my own. I was doing well. I had the wind in my sails, but about 3 or 4 years in, I got approached by a global business to buy out my shares. And there I could see a window within 2 or 3 years where I would exit the whole of the running my own business world. Um, and that's the direction I headed in. And then during COVID, just before COVID lockdown, I got diagnosed again. And so ran the business through COVID, going through the chemo. I was the first to have a mastectomy, get another mastectomy. And I just knew that again, I needed a new path. I need to flow. I need to feel like I'm flowing in a river. I was not flowing again. So I let go of the banks, exited the business 4 years ago, and flowed again. And I'm not scared of the unknown. I'm not. I'm like, the worst place I can be is stuck in a river behind a rock, not going anywhere. It's just
Yeah.
awful for me. So I'm good at being in that space.
So, and you mentioned obviously Joe Dispenza, and yes, I mean we both went to Basel to see Dr. Joe. What was it, last year or the year before? Whenever it was, anyway. So tell us a bit more about that sort of side of your journey in terms of what we talked about. Obviously, what changes you made in terms of your career and everything else, but what other sort of changes did you make, and and talk a bit about your spiritual pathway?
I think I think when people go through deep traumas, and I think I said this story to you before, I went over to India for a while and did a Buddhist retreat, met the Dalai Lama, did lots of meditation in inner work. I realized that, and I know this sounds crazy, but your mind, body, and soul are intrinsically connected. And I needed to like connect back in with my body, my mind and my body and my soul, and really work out why I was here, the meaning of life, and what was happening. And I went on a very deep, and still am, spiritual journey over the meaning of where I'm going and where I'm at. So Joe Dispenza is part of that journey. I really, really love the work he does around meditation. His whole philosophy about how you feel, how you act, and your thoughts shape your life. And I totally agree with that. It's a very Buddhist philosophy. So if you want change in your life, you've got to look at your thoughts, you've got to look at the way you feel, you've got to look at your actions and say, okay, I'm going to step into and imagine a new self and almost like recreate yourself from the inside out to embrace a new path that gives you the confidence and the courage to sort of continue on. So I think it's been a very deep, I think the answers for all of us are deep within us, but we just have to stay quiet enough to listen to understand what that voice is trying to tell us.
I think that's really, thank you so much for sharing that, Julie, because I think that's so true for so many of us. I mean, we're so, as a collective world, I think we're all very head driven, we're all sort of in our egos and everything else, we're not actually connecting not only with ourselves. And if we can't connect with ourselves, then we can't actually properly connect with each other. You can't properly connect, to nature or anything else if you're so driven by your head and there is just no connection down into how you actually feel. And that is the point, isn't it? It's that thing of, I feel really anxious about, I'm going to push forward anyway, instead of actually dropping into your body and looking at what the anxiety is actually showing you.
I think that's it. I think it's been incredible. I think it builds an incredible awareness, when you're going through this journey, because you've got you've got the pain of it, you've got the physical, the mental pain of it. And I think when you're aware, you become very present in your life, incredibly present. And with that, it gives you a new realization. And I think one of the really good stories I heard from a Buddhist monk when I was over there was, he said, we're all born, imagine we're born a little baby into this world, and metaphorically speaking, we're a little baby and we jump off the high of the toppest mountain in the world, and we're flying through the air with a little blindfold on. So it's a baby, imagine it, a baby flying down a mountain with a blindfold on, and this beautiful sort of lovely sensory life. And you have an illness or a trauma, and the blindfold comes off and you realize how close to the floor you are. And I think when you go through a deep cancer diagnosis, I think the blindfold comes off and that never goes back on. So it's a gift in the sense you have an incredible amount of awareness. You understand that life is impermanent. And then you've got a decision about what you do with your time on this amazing, beautiful planet, which feels deeply disconnected at the moment from us to our other species, our animals, our world, you name it. And when you get that deep connection and that love of it all, there's no going back. There was literally no going back. So what do you do with yourself after that blindfold comes off? And there's this period of fear, deep fear and anxiety. And gradually over time, you build awareness, you learn to live with your new self and your possibilities, and you embrace life in a richer way.
That's such a great analogy. I love that. The
Mm,
blindfold coming off and just seeing what is real and I'm really faced with that kind of stark reality. You're going to go one way or the other, aren't you?
yeah.
So yeah,
Some
both
people
each other.
do sadly go the other way
Yes,
as
of
well,
course. Yeah,
where
yeah.
they can't actually bring themselves out of the deep hole that cancer can also create for them, and they can't see beyond the darkness,
Yeah.
which is a great pity because there is other ways to see things, but it's having that, again, that connection within ourselves, isn't it? And that ability to take back our power.
Yeah, and it's a journey that is a very deep inner journey you
Yeah.
you go down. Um and that's what got me into doing my writing. So my first book I wrote, which was a non-fiction, was about thinking fearlessly to grow healthy and wealthy, to do with that. And it was 7 stages. So what you do is you start in a place of fear, and I'm an ambassador for a cancer charity as well, as Future Dreams, who are an amazing cancer charity for people going through breast cancer. So shout out to them if you ever need help and support on any level. It's a beautiful house in King's Cross. Sam and the CEO, and they're just so welcoming. I would recommend anyone to go. But when you go through cancer, you go through this innate sense of fear. So intrinsically, what happened was I thought how do I get out of this sense of fear? And I'm a deep researcher, you know, looked at everything from quantum physics to, you know, to cancer care to whatever. I did a lot of research around it and said, okay, to get out of this place of fear, what do I need to do? And the next step is self-belief and self-love. Is start believing in yourself and start loving yourself and being kind to yourself. And that was step 2. Then step 3 was once you get through that, you then go, okay, well, I'm getting a bit curious again. I'm not so scared of dying. I'm believing in myself. You start to get curious and learn and grow. And then after that, you look around at all your friends and you think, how can we connect? How can we be part of this world? So there's whole look at my tribe and then find your joy lightness. So I did this whole book around how to get out of this space of fear. And I do pro bono work as part of my cancer charity. And it feels like the work I've been doing in this space has genuinely really helped people to get from a place of the darkness to saying, okay, how do I step into this light? And it's absolutely the first step is self-love. And coincidentally, I did a talk at Spa Fest for Amanda Winwood and was speaking on the stage about this and doing a workshop. And Louise Baker, who's a neuroscientist, you heard earlier, came up and said, wow, how do you know this? And we had a really good chat and got on very well. So that's part of my next book I'm just about to release in the next month, which is this whole concept of it's a 12-week course, a journey, and you go through these 12 weeks, week by week, and there's exercises that you do. And the book is called Tiny Brave Moves. And in these periods of deep darkness, we can be in a waiting area, which is quite fearful. So how do we get beyond that? By doing tiny incremental moves. So the first 4 weeks of the course journey is how you think. So I worked a lot with Louise on the thought process of thinking, how we think as humans, how do we, and really analyzing your own thought process. The next 4 weeks is about starting to be curious and creating new plans for yourself and visioning and meditation, ideas for the future. And the final 4 weeks is about doing it. You know, stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, just get on and do those things. And I've really loved working with Louise over the last year to do that. And I'm really hoping that over the next 6 months that book can get into the right people's hands who need that support.
Yeah.
Because it's a really, as people on this podcast and will understand listening to it, you don't know what to do. There's a whole period of absolute stuckness. And I'm sounding really confident and on it and all that sort of stuff. But believe me, I lay under the tree in the garden in many, many tears thinking, what do I need to do next? How can I bring myself through this? Because I've got 2 really young children that really need their mom, you know?
Absolutely. And, and thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that as well. And I think your book sounds amazing. I'm sure that's going to be an absolute bestseller for helping people in this space.
Absolutely. Sounds like just what a lot of the clients that I see who finish treatment as well, they describe that feeling stuck and just not knowing, they haven't had that any kind of support before as well, especially is, that I know a lot of people are talking about that at the moment, after treatment and then what next? And I'm not the person that I was, but how do I find out who I am and what I want to do? So yeah, that's want to get on the Amazon wish list straight away.
When's
Yeah.
it being released, Julia?
Well, I really hope, I'm just going through the final edits at the moment. I really hope in the next 4 to 8 weeks.
So by the time this podcast is released, actually, because
Yeah.
just bearing in mind we're recording this in January, but it
Yeah.
should launch in April.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it should definitely be on Amazon then. Look out for it. Tiny Brave Moves.
It's out.
Yeah, it is out. It is out in the future. Yeah, Tiny Brave Moves. Julia Leckey. And what I have to say, which I really, really crafted into the book, this is a inner journey. We all have the answers within ourselves, but we just have to quieten ourselves down enough to do the work. So there's ideas, there's case studies, there's suggestions, it's inspiring, but ultimately it's about your journey. And this is about you connecting back in with you, which
Absolutely.
is a fundamental, I think, when you're going through a cancer journey. So how do I connect in with it? There's a really lovely exercise where I went to Elizabeth Gilbert and did a workshop last year, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love and Big Magic. And she did this really lovely exercise I put in the book about find your inner child. And my inner child is called Juju. And I remember sitting in Elizabeth's workshop finding inner Juju. And inner Juju is creative, she's fearless, she's like dancing. And I was like, where has this woman gone? Where has this Juju gone?
She disappeared.
So I dug and found her, and it's an exercise in the book to say, sometimes we need to tap back into our wonderful inner childlike self, because this planet is amazing, and we need to live our life every single day and be alive, and digging into this book is important for your inner awareness.
Sounds like a really important resource for people who haven't had cancer yet
Yes, it
themselves.
is. Yeah.
We do
It's
just go through the motions, don't we? And forced by circumstances, whatever, whether that, like you described in your being in your business and just grinding through, but in your heart and your soul, knowing that's not really where you wanted to be. And it took the shock of all your life circumstances to put things into action, and yeah, so many people I'm sure can relate to that, where you're going through the motions but not really connecting with who you really are and what you want to do. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's control the controllable, all the stuff that you girls know, what's within my power to control. And life can feel particularly overwhelming at times. And, if you look on the news and the shock and the fear and everything. So this is really about grounding yourself in you, because ultimately it is about putting on your oxygen mask and getting yourself to the best self. And I don't, 12 years in from having, two very aggressive cancers, I'm going to say I'm on no drugs, no nothing, no tablet. I take a small vitamin C in the morning and a few like little herbal stuff. But I do feel like I wanted to live this life. And to do that, I really had to like work up every single day on this planet, that I wanted to be able to say that I have lived my life as best as I can. So that was why the diamond in the coal, if you like, is for me, is that the trajectory of my life so radically changed when I had the diagnosis. And I think if I hadn't, I think I'd have still been in that same business, and I think I would have been miserable. And now I've had this like much more richer life, But I'm so grateful to myself and my soul for exploring in my one lifetime.
And that's the thing, and it is about, being grateful for yourself for that, because actually you could have just sat and wallowed. You could have been sitting in the mud still,
Yeah.
and just sort of slinging it out and not knowing where to go. But you made very different choices, and it is sometimes about choices.
mm,
Yeah, it is. I think it's again, I keep saying it was tapping into your inner self. And one of the other things that I did, which I'm really hoping to, it will be out in April, is I went on a Curtis Brown writing course, and I treated myself to this. I say this at the time because I was super busy with work, and I did that for 5 months, and I ended up with a book called Mother of All Gods, Men and Earth, and it's my main character is Mother Nature, and it talks about the disconnection of human beings to the planet, and it's a beautiful story. It's quite full on, and my plan is to release the first 15,000 words in April from my accounts, and do installments every 6 weeks. This needs to breathe. This book needs to breathe. So, and it's a trilogy. So if anybody's interested in human beings' connection with the planet, Mother Nature, what she thinks, how she thinks. And when I started writing the book 3 years ago, I had no idea where I was going to end. And the ending is really different than I imagined it was going to be when I first started writing it, because I did loads of amazing. I did this quantum physics stuff. I did a Harvard University course. I've done a course on psychic intuition at London School of Psychics. So, oh my God, what an amazing adventure I've been on to get this book into the world. And I'd never again would have done that if I
you've
hadn't
done
have
that, yeah.
just reached into my inner child and said, what do you want? And I remember at 8 reading Lord of the Rings thinking, wow, if I can ever do this in my one single lifetime. And I'm not saying it's even as good as that, because I love Tolkien, but I needed to get this trilogy into the world and to give birth to my creativity. Because that's another interesting fact I found out, was when creativity is in the room, there's no room for fear.
Yeah. Oh,
No room.
that's really interesting, actually. Because I think lots of people do lose their creativity as they get older. I mean, I know definitely for me, it's something I'm definitely heading back to, in so many ways. But yeah, you get lost in the humdrum of everyday life, of running a business, of having a family. And when do you get time just to sort of sit and just be creative, whether that's throwing paint at a wall or whether that's just even journaling can be creative or whatever it is, whatever resounds for you, whether it's sitting sewing. There's so many different forms of creativity, but it just gets put on the back burner and we don't prioritize that time anymore.
No, we don't. And I think, I think when you think about having life live through you, that's what life is surely, is letting life flow through you and your creativity. So now what I do a lot of is I do a lot of business coaching, non-exec work, working with founders and stuff to really get them to tap into their inner self. And it's so rewarding. Um, for me and for them to sort of like dig into what they really want on their time on this planet. So been quite a, and I think I didn't mention earlier, but I think it's in my DNA. So my mum and dad were Salvation Army officers for many, many years, social workers, head teachers, and very philanthropic. And obviously I shot down the very commercial entrepreneurial path. And then this path that I'm on now, which is, 12 days a month of consulting coaching and 8 days getting these books into the world, feels much more aligned with my DNA and my value base.
Mm, fantastic.
Mm.
So, just before we wind up today's session with the lovely Julia, what would you like to give the listeners as your top tip that they could perhaps take away? I know I've thrown this one at you, haven't I? I didn't even give you any time to prepare.
No, I think it's really simple. I think, going through cancer is a fearful journey because it's unexpected, it's unknown, it's quite often a shock and a surprise. And I think my first advice I give to anybody is look to yourself for self-love and self-belief and lean into the people that love you and support you and are kind to you and nurture you in those moments, because from self-love comes self-belief, and after self-belief you start getting curious about this amazing planet and world we're on. So, don't sit in fear on your own. Reach out for help and support. And having been through that journey, it is a light at the end of the tunnel that you can get to. But it's having the courage to get up, stand up, look for that help, look for that support. Whether it's, talking to you ladies, going to the Future Dreams house, reading books, speaking to journals. Louise Hay, massive fan of Heal Yourself and all that sort of stuff, is don't sit in the waiting room of fear.
Mm.
Step out, start believing and loving yourself, and be curious about, so that every single day on this planet you can embrace and feel alive in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so aligned with that because my little framework that sits under my medicine movement is SIPS, and SIPS stands for slowing down, identity, purpose, and self-love. And I actually wanted to put the self-love at the beginning, but the problem was actually I felt you had to slow down first before you could look at self-love.
True.
So it needed a double S at the beginning, but SIPS doesn't work like that. So but yeah, sips. But no, for me, it was actually about taking gentle sips instead of gulping. That was the other analogy to it. Slow down enough to actually take a sip. And then actually you can, because healing really will start with gentle sips rather than big gulps.
Yeah, and I think it's ultimately as well, like we know it's awareness. It takes you into a really heightened sense of awareness when you go through cancer. You're in there every day, you're living moment to moment, you're waiting for results, you're waiting for things to happen. And it really opens your awareness up. And when you're sitting in awareness, you can really then lean into your inner self and say, what am I trying to say? What do I want in this world? What am I trying to sort of do? But it has to start with conscious awareness, which is like a similar thing. It's slow down,
Slow down.
listen to what your body's saying. If you're tired, go to sleep. Don't push through stuff. A lot of self-love and self-kindness to yourself is ultimately healing. We just know that. It's a higher frequency of love. We're talking about love frequencies than the fear place. And There's so much amazing stuff out there that can really help people now. The radical remissions work I really love with Dr. Clay Morgan, Joe Dispenza. There's this infinite um, fountain of very rich knowledge from that can help and support you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today to share your story.
Yes, thank you. That's been really enlightening, and I look forward to your book, which must
Yeah.
by now.
Books, yeah,
Books.
books.
Yeah,
Books, Tiny
Books
Brave
will come out.
Moves. Yeah, I mean, I really hope that it helps many people. It's been a little passion project of mine, and so grateful working with Louise, and you're a surgeon, to give that lived experience and the scientific edge to it as well. So, yeah, I'm
It-
really excited about that. Hopefully, helping, because
Well,
that's what we all look for in the end, isn't it?
Louise is on one of our other episodes, so I'm sure it will link up really, really nicely. If somebody's listening to yours, perhaps they'll go back or whichever.
Yeah, definitely. I love Louise. Her brain is brilliant.
But yes, thank you so much. It's been really inspirational, and I'm sure our guests are going to take away some really amazing points that they can integrate into their own lives. So this
Yeah.
is the end of this episode of Your Way Now with myself, Sarah.
And myself.
Yeah,
Me.
is it
Sue.
you?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
And
Been
until
a long
next
day.
time, take care.
Thank you.
Get the strength you want and need from real stories and expert voices. It's time for Your Way Now.
Thank you for listening to Your Way Now. If you have a story you'd like to share, or would like to be a guest, or have ideas about what would be helpful to hear on future episodes, we'd really love to hear from you. Please remember you're not alone on this journey, and your voice really does matter. So until next time, this is Your Way Now.